If you want to accomplish anything, and I mean anything significant, you've got to have a plan. In the world of management, planning isn't just some nice to have, it is the foundational first step. It's literally the P in the classic POLC framework: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And it has to come first. I mean, think about it. Without a plan, what are you even organizing? What are you trying to control? So yeah, let's dive into this.
I absolutely love this quote. It just paints such a perfect picture, doesn't it? Imagine you're standing on one side of a huge canyon. That's where you are right now. And way over on the other side, that's where you want to be. Planning is the bridge that gets you across. Without it, you're just stuck on the edge, staring at your goal from a distance.
So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, simply put, planning is all about answering 3 key questions before you even start. First, what are we going to do? Second, how are we going to do it? And third, who's responsible for making it happen? It's really about creating a clear, detailed blueprint for the future.
All right, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by digging a little deeper into what planning really is. Then we'll look at its core characteristics, break down the super practical 7-step process, see how there's a different kind of plan for every purpose, and finally, we'll get real and take an honest look at the pros and cons. So, first up, why do we call planning the foundational function? Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't just start throwing up walls or laying pipes without a detailed blueprint, right? Of course not. Planning is that blueprint for an organization. Every other function, organizing your teams, controlling the budget, it all depends on that initial plan being solid. This quote really gets to the heart of what makes planning so powerful. It's not just about making to-do lists. It's a whole mindset. It's about taking that pause to think before you jump into action and making sure that your actions are guided by solid facts, not just gut feelings or random guesses. Okay, so we know planning is this forward-looking mental exercise, but what else really defines it? Let's break down the core characteristics, the things that make up the true nature of planning. There are really 4 key things to remember here. First, as we've already said, it's the primary function. It comes before anything else. Second, it's pervasive. That means it happens everywhere, from the CEO in the boardroom down to the supervisor on the factory floor. Third, it's continuous. This is not a set it and forget it kind of deal. And finally, it's futuristic. It's always about preparing the organization for what's coming next. And this brings us back to the idea that planning is basically a workout for your brain. It forces you to look ahead, to imagine all these different possibilities, and to make smart judgments. It's really where logic and creativity collide. You're trying to find clever ways to use the resources you have to jump on new opportunities. Now, people mix these two up all the time, but planning and forecasting are totally different. See, forecasting is looking at the data and saying, okay, based on current trends, we expect a 10% increase in sales. It's a prediction. Planning takes that and says, right, a 10% increase is expected, but we want a 20% increase. Now, what specific steps do we need to take to make that a reality? So forecasting is passive, but planning is active. Okay, so how do you actually build that bridge to the future? What are the nuts and bolts? Well, that's what this next section is all about. We are going to walk through the 7-step process, the practical step-by-step construction manual for turning a goal into reality. And this process, it just makes sense. It flows logically. You start by setting objectives. What exactly do you want to achieve? Then you develop premises, which is just a fancy way of saying you make some educated assumptions about the future, like we assume the economy will grow by 2%. Based on those assumptions, you identify and then evaluate different ways to get there. You pick the best option, you implement the plan, and then, and this part is so crucial, you follow up to make sure it's actually working. All right, now that we've got the process down, let's talk about the plans themselves. Because look, not all plans are created equal. It's like a mechanic who has different wrenches for different bolts. A good manager needs different types of plans for different situations. This table lays out the hierarchy perfectly. See, everything starts with a strategic plan. That's the big picture, 5-year-plus vision set by top leadership. That massive vision then gets broken down into smaller tactical plans for each department, usually on a 1 to 3 year timeline. And those tactical plans get broken down even further into the daily or weekly operational plans that supervisors manage right there on the front lines. See how they all cascade down from the top? Here's another way to slice it. How often do you use the plan?
You've got single-use plans for one-off situations, right? Like launching a new product or a specific marketing campaign. Once it's done, that plan is retired. On the other hand, you have standing plans. These are your rule books, things like HR policies, safety procedures, the stuff you use over and over again.
And this mind map here, it pulls everything we've been talking about together into one single image. You can see that central idea of planning right in the middle, and then it branches out. Over on the right, you see the 7-step process we just walked through. Down below, you've got the different types of plans we discussed, like strategic and operational. And on the left, there are the core features, the fact that it's primary, pervasive, and futuristic. It really shows how all these different pieces connect to form a complete framework for making smart decisions.
Okay, last but not least, let's get real about planning for a second. It's incredibly powerful, for sure, but it is not a magic bullet. To be a really good planner, you have to understand both its strengths and its weaknesses. So, let's do a final inspection and weigh the pros and cons.
The benefits, they're huge. A good plan gives everyone a clear direction, so you're all rowing in the same boat, in the same direction. It helps reduce that anxiety around uncertainty, it forces you to innovate, and it makes day-to-day decisions way easier. It also sets the benchmarks you need to measure success. Really, it's the foundation for great teamwork. But, and this is a big but, there are real dangers to watch out for. First off, no plan can ever perfectly predict the future. It's just not possible. Second, a plan can become a prison. If it's too rigid, it can absolutely crush creativity. It also takes a ton of time and, yeah, money to do it right. And maybe most importantly, just having a plan doesn't guarantee you'll succeed. Execution is everything. So we end right back where we started, facing the challenge of an uncertain future. Planning doesn't get rid of risk, but it prepares you to manage it. It forces us to think, to anticipate, and to act with real purpose. So the question I want to leave you with is a personal one. The future is uncertain. What's your plan?